In a fast changing world, you'll get lost if you're anchoring yourself to what is changing. The only way you have sanity is to anchor yourself to what is not changing. Right? And I think what has not changed is your ability to deliver trust. One of the things I keep telling myself is the next big disruption in supply chains is the lack of trust chain. 95% of the so-called digital scams begin with the physical information. So one aspect of risk which I can clearly see is, do you understand how your ecosystem partners optimize? Do you have visibility and a shared understanding of that? Be that the shipper, be that the logistics service provider, or be that the gig provider that is working with you.
Are there things you could do to build trust in that instant, in sort of like that shortened time frame now to bring that conversation forward? Welcome to another episode of Trust Matters. For decades, winning in logistics really meant one thing: reach. You have more PIN codes, more vehicles, and more people on the ground. But that playbook is starting to fade a little bit, especially with AI coming in, with technology now becoming pervasive. And on-demand and gig workforces are now becoming the default in logistics, which is a very different mode from, I think, 15 years ago when we looked at it. So where does the real advantage lie, really? And for that, who I have with me today is someone who has been through this journey, has lived this journey. And I'm very excited to talk to him. Ganesh Iyer, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Paritosh.
Before we get started, because you've done so much and so many different things, and I know you're involved in 100 things, would love to get your introduction and a little background of what brought you to where you are today.
Sure, thank you. And, really appreciate this opportunity, right? I think, very interesting. At the heart, I'm a technologist. But what I love is where technology meets the physical world. So logistics just happens to be one. There is manufacturing. There's a lot of other things. So I firmly believe that the bit comes from the it, right? The physicality comes from information, and the ability to sync information and the physical world is important. And that's what is exciting. So I've spent a lot of time in logistics, supply chains, manufacturing, understanding how information and actions interplay with each other. Right? That's been what keeps me going.
Yeah, and I know we talked before this, and it just seems like you're doing so much at the same time, which makes me wonder how you have time in the day to even do this. But thank you for doing it with us. So let's talk about a little bit of logistics.
Sure.
I think logistics, you've spent a fair bit of time in that space. It has gone through a fairly dramatic transformation in the recent times. It was paper-driven, fragmented. I think it was just sort of loose. And I think because we have so many states, every state had its own set of rules and patchwork of agencies that you worked with. What's the shift now that's happened from where you sit?
Yeah, very important question, right? And I think there are two parts to this, right? What has happened and what is happening, right? Because the field of logistics and supply chain is so much about continuous change rather than, hey, this has happened, right? And you kind of alluded to a few points about AI and technology and, those things. But I think what has fundamentally changed, if you were to look at the change lens, right, is logistics today is a lot about customer experience in the first place than about services or, have I delivered it, right? So that's the fundamental shift. And, and that is a big shift. But the way I would like to look at the industry is what has not changed, right? Because, in a fast changing world, you'll get lost if you're anchoring yourself to what is changing. The only way you have sanity is to anchor yourself to what is not changing.
Right.
And I think what has not changed is your ability to deliver trust, right? Day in and day out.
Right.
Day in and day out. What systems do you use? What processes do you follow? Did you take it by surface or by air? Doesn't matter. People trust you to deliver that. Okay. So I think trust is an anchor that has not changed, and it's only strengthening. Now, aspects of trust, the attributes of trust, what is needed is very different, right? And if you look at Indian Postal Services many years ago, Registered AD was one way that they delivered trust.
Right.
Correct? But it has evolved. So dimensions of the trust have changed, but trust is an anchor that has not changed. Speed as another, the last few years, actually, speed has come up as an anchor.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? So how fast you deliver, correct? So that's the thing, right? Then, the on-demand, right? While they look related, they are not. Right? On the on-demand world is slightly different, correct? So what happens is the entire operating model has changed. What has again not changed is logistics and supply chains continue to be a orchestrated bunch of network players.
Fair.
Right? And that's only deepening right now. Correct? So traditionally we used to call it first mile, middle mile, last mile.
Right.
Within that, there are multiple players, each optimizing for their needs and all those things. Now, as you said, the gig workforce is coming into play. Yep. So what has happened is the business models have changed. Right? So trust, speed, reliability, efficiency, these things have not changed.
Right. That's a very interesting sort of lens on it, because I think typically when you talk about change, people immediately jump into, okay, yeah, we know AI is here, tech is here. It's I can be very accurate about when my delivery is happening and all of that. But fundamental, I think, which interesting point that you bring is the fundamentals of the industry haven't changed. And if you anchor yourself to it and you build around it.
Correct.
So how do you build more trust?
Absolutely.
We used to deliver it back in the day as well. It's just now I deliver it faster because I have better technology.
Absolutely.
So that's a very, very different lens than what I've heard before. So I think let's talk a little about risk. Obviously, logistics is a industry that's been fraught with risk.
Correct.
Traditionally, it still exists. It always starts with the risk starts with sort of the delivery fraud. That's where we kind of always start with, right? Whether it's COD scams, fake deliveries. What's the real risk landscape look like?
Yeah, very interesting question, right? And I think risk especially with the sprawling of digital technologies, right? And now with AI, a lot of people don't realize that AI carries a different kind of risk when you use it in your logistics operations, right? One is what you brought about, right? The consumer aspect of the risk,
right?
Correct? Which is, hey, is my personal information at stake, right? By the way, I've just started a company called Avrutam, where what we're looking at it is how do you ensure personal identity, secrecy and stuff like that when it comes to the physical world, right? When you get your parcel, a lot of the details are open.
Right.
And it's not that, the detail about your name or your phone number, but the information exists where I know what exactly you are ordering.
Right.
Correct? I know that Paritosh has today ordered this from this company.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of information where you can build a profile for Paritosh.
Correct.
Right.
And how that gets used, you don't know.
Yep.
The second thing is, as I said, right, there are a web of players. Correct? Now, once a delivery is completed, how do you ensure that information regarding the transaction is not remembered by all these parties and their systems?
Right.
Right? And that's the place where, Avrutam is starting to take shape, right? Because, when I say this, you will find it, easy to understand. 95% of these so-called digital scams begin with the physical information.
True. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised because I think, that's the information is out there everywhere.
Absolutely. Right. And then people use techniques to then break into digital systems. So, we are looking at that lens. How do you build an interoperable? But coming back to your thing. So that's one aspect of it, which is the consumer facing risk. Right. Then there are operational risks. They have just gone up. For example, in India, right, there are different researches that are done. But I would say more than 50% of the trucks lie idle because of driver availability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, for somebody who's invested in that brings a very different risk.
Right. Yeah, that's an operational risk of just being able to deliver.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Then you have the infrastructure risk, right? You build hubs, sorting centers, all those things, right? How do you manage that? Because logistics has become a consumer-driven, service, but also it exposes it to the consumer behavior, right? So mood is bad, I won't order. Right? So there are different aspects of risk, right? So I think the entire value chain needs to be trusted. Right? And of course, you spoke about gig workers coming in, right? How do I know that? And when I say and I'm using it broadly, the receiver, the logistics service provider, the infrastructure provider, the shipper.
Right.
How do I know that I can trust this person? How do I know?
Right.
And in a country like India, like let's say I come from a state X, I don't think background verification will be available in the state in which I became a driver.
Right.
I don't know. And I have personally dealt with some of these cases.
Right.
So KYC itself is not enough. You have to go beyond KYC.
Right.
So that identity becomes very important. Right? The layer that is very important when you deliver trust is the identity of all the participants, how they have come together, what are the kind of motivations for them to come together. Right? So as a logistics service provider, my motivation for hiring a gig delivery person is I don't have fixed capacity.
Right.
But that motivation doesn't mean I go and kind of do some things that can hurt the privacy of the receiver, because if that happens, the shipper is at risk.
Right.
The seller is at risk.
Yeah, fair. I think one of I had a conversation with someone, and the point is the logistics company actually carries a lot of the onus for building the trust in the ecosystem, because they happen to be the mile that as a consumer I will look and say, well, yeah, sure, that marketplace didn't work, but you didn't deliver.
Oh, absolutely.
Or
right?
I got scammed by you.
Yeah. And even not scammed, right? And I think we all would have done this, right? Let's say the delivery was delayed. We shout at the delivery boy. And I'm consciously using the word, because you're saying, I don't care where it was. I'm holding you accountable.
Right.
Sometimes I've seen people, lose their temper with the delivery boys because the product was not what they ordered. Now it's not the delivery boy's
problem.
responsibility at all.
Agree.
Right?
Yeah.
But this is the expectation now that the new logistics companies are carrying. Even from a compliance point of view, let's say the truck gets stopped. Who's accountable for a consignment that was not declared properly?
Yeah.
The logistics service guy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more responsibility that now the logistics service companies take on. So identity, trust, they have different dimensions to it now.
Fair. And to build on that, I think what are some of the risks that the industry is sort of always underestimating? And then, over time it starts to compound and kind of build on.
I think the last 5-6 years, definitely the consumer side of the risk, I wouldn't say underestimating, but, they have looked at it at a very different lens, right? Like if I'm the operations guy and I'm using the operations lens, okay, fine, consumer risk. What will happen? We'll refund.
Yeah.
Right? But am I hurting the brand that is using me as the logistics service provider? It's a very different lens to look at. So how do you jointly build trust? So one of the things I would say as a theme is being an ecosystem, being a network. Trust is delivered by you, but not built by you.
Fair.
So you get everybody to align to something.
Right. You're sort of the catalyst for that trust.
And for every consignment, the trust is negotiated. Trust is negotiated. Like I'm the delivery boy. I want to earn a little more on this. If you don't allow me to do that, I'm going to do something that's going to ultimately break the trust chain. Right. So one of the things I keep telling myself is the next big disruption in supply chains is the lack of trust chain.
Right.
And it almost runs parallel. And you can extend it to saying, you know what, where did the produce come from? So in supply chains, you can go back all the way.
Yeah.
Is it an organic product? Means I know it is organic. So if I was reimagining a logistics service company today, I would actually build it natively to be trust first.
Interesting.
Because ultimately you're delivering trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's...
And trust without speed has no meaning.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now we're just too used to delivery happening.
And this is true of mobility also, right? Yeah. When you get into a plane or a train, you are trusting them to deliver that thing, that it's not the ticket or the time.
Yep.
Right? We all have had our experiences at airports.
Right.
Right. So the trust breaks.
Right. No, fair. I think this is touching upon, anyways. The next question is touching about maybe your philosophy of managing risk at scale. I think, obviously you talked a fair bit about trust, and I think that seems like that's very core to some of your basic philosophy of how you build trust. But I mean, beyond that, is there, how do you manage risk at a scale like that?
Correct. So I think very, very good question, right? To me, risk management, pricing and trust go together, right? So ultimately, if you look at it, let's say I'm an operations guy in logistics. What am I pricing, right? I am pricing. I have assumed a 80% utilization. I am pricing for that. I'm buying either a call option or a put option if I'll be overutilized or underutilized. Right. And that's where I lose money.
Right.
Now that's risk for me, right? What is the last mile guy doing? The risk is, will I miss deliveries?
Fair, yeah.
So you have these components of risks. You bring them together and then you kind of build it into a pricing model, right? Eventually, I hope the logistics service companies are able to share this risk with the ecosystem. And so I see that as part of outcome sharing.
Okay.
Right? Like the shipper, the logistics service company, and the person receiving it all have to be aligned on this.
Right.
Otherwise, the trust breaks. Right? If the trust breaks, maybe you don't order from the same shipper again.
Again, yeah. Absolutely.
Or I, as the logistics service provider, will say too many attempts to deliver. And when I go there, the person is not willing to receive it.
Right.
Right. So I think that, and again, now with gig workers, the human aspect of trust comes in.
Yeah, that's a very underrated risk at the moment. But
Yeah,
I feel
because
like that's
earlier they
a
were
huge risk to
employees.
carry.
Now
Yes.
I have engaging them as independent contractors, which means they are optimizing for their own.
Yep, exactly.
Like just yesterday I was reading something on LinkedIn and they said gig workers. I said, within gig workers, I see three kinds of people. People who want stable income. People who go after, okay, today somebody is offering me additional, I'll go after that. And people who use gig for flexi. Their optimizations are very different, but they want to optimize the overall thing. It's not like this or that or that. I want this and that
This
and that.
this. Yeah.
Now, if you're not plugged into that optimization, the risk arises. So one aspect of risk, which I can clearly see is, do you understand how your ecosystem partners optimize? Do you have visibility and a shared understanding of that?
Right.
Be that the shipper, be that the logistics service provider, or be that the gig provider that is working with you, right? How do you optimize this?
Right.
What are your goals?
Right. And I think this brings me to, I think, that the point about gig workers, because I think they are becoming a very important part of the economy, and especially, I think even the logistics and supply chain sort of arm of it. So the question then becomes, how do you, maybe you've answered it a little bit, but how do you think of risk on the supply side then with this influx of this huge number of gig workers coming in?
Correct.
So how does one really start to maybe even reframe your thinking around, hey, how do I need to look at risk now? Because risk of maybe the shipping methodology, or maybe identifying location and all of that, I think is starting to get solved. The human side of it, which is this whole piece, which is very hard to even honestly model in some sense.
Correct.
How do you sort of look at that?
Very, very good point. I think you touched upon some things that I'm working on, right? So when you bring the gig in, economy in place and the gig participation into your workflows, right? There are 2-3 things that become very important. The first is the static KYCs that you do.
Right.
I mean, that's static. It kind of is like the minimum 35 that you need to get to clear the exam.
Right.
Correct? Where it is getting interesting is as you engage in my ecosystem, I am able to study your behavioral dynamics. Right? And that study is important for me to understand what kind of behaviors as a delivery person you are exhibiting. Right? I'm sure those who are in the industry know this, right? If you get a message at 6:05, 6:10 that, hey, we attempted delivery, but you are not at home. It's actually the delivery person not attempting, but because it's 6 p.m.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah.
Just
So
send
the
them a message.
consignee not at address.
Yeah.
In a way, that's not the right status. Now, we are able to do that kind of analytics now.
Yep.
Right? And it's not at like individual level, but at a behavioral level. Right? Maybe that consignment was given to him or her too late in the day. Or maybe like when the delivery bag was formed, he or she really didn't want to do it and it was. So you can go back and find the reasons.
Right.
What caused this behavior? So we are interested in the causality of it, not the penalizing of it. Now that you can churn a lot to understand, okay, what happens. This also helps you like, okay, is it necessary to have what level of gig employment is good for your business model? At what point does a fixed cost of delivery makes sense versus a variable cost of delivery?
Right.
So you can start fine tuning, and that today with AI and others, you can actually do it for a daily basis.
Yeah, that's the one definitely big shift, because with these large generative models coming in, and you can actually do it real time,
Correct.
almost near real time.
Yes.
Kind of keep modeling.
Yeah, at least we
behavior.
can do it for tomorrow today.
Yeah, that is already here. You're right. I think with this model, though, your supply side, you can obviously scale, and like you said, it's not a fixed cost, so you can sort of manage that a little bit. But it often it comes at the cost of reliability, because if my employee, I can manage, gig worker, not so much. I don't have control over it, right? So how do you sort of ensure consistency? Is there a way to ensure some sort of consistency and accountability in this state?
Yes and no. I think it first, it begins with understanding that, as I said, the gig behavior is different from somebody who's your employee.
Right.
Because the motivational factors are very different. Yeah. Correct. Now, if you try to flatten the motivation factors, then it won't appeal to a gig worker. As I said, they are looking at optimizations their way. They are gig because they want to be masters of their destiny. Right. But you can model these things. So you can model by saying, what kind of delivery promise would require what kind of, person to do that, right? What kind of background to do that? What have they done in the past, right? You can begin with kind of building the trust over a period of time, and we can partner with companies who can do this and, work that through. You don't have to do it all by yourself if you're a logistics company, correct? But as I said, the trust chain includes every actor, right?
Right.
And then you can then figure out, okay, look, I need to send this, 2 lakh rupee iPhone, but only I have a gig worker. What kind of incentives will reduce the risk of
the guy running away with it?
Yeah. Whatever it is, it could be whatever happens, right? The promise not being met. You can model those scenarios, and then you can say, look, I need to address these things so that I minimize the probability of that happening or the possibility of that happening. Then you track, right? So I keep telling people, right? I think, when a consignment is generated or / parcel, right? I think there are about more than 100 data points that can be gathered. The industry captures 4 or 5.
Right.
It's like booked, entered my hub, left my hub, delivered.
Yep.
But the real action is in between these steps. The real action is there.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And it's, if I look at my delivery notices, they're all only if there are 3 or 4 discrete data points that I get.
Correct.
You tell me, all right, it's left maybe. Now, I don't know where it is, but okay, it's on its way.
Or on the other hand, you will get these hyper-local guys who will just keep showing the bike.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, I don't trust it any more than the message that I get.
Right. Fair. I think with the gig workers, I think that the thought is that, okay, as demand spikes, I can get the supply. But that supply is not easy to come by. And it's not easy to scale at that speed that you want.
Correct.
Right? I mean, especially if you have to trust that individual. So, that seems to me that it's just one piece of the whole puzzle. Like, okay, let's have gig work. Is there other things that are happening in the industry that can sort of help with this challenge of supply-demand gap that's happening?
I think yes. So this gap exists because the demand visibility is pretty poor. I said the advantage of the supply chains are there are network partners. So the risk is shared. But the flip side of that is the demand visibility is broken. And like if I am a outsourced provider for a brand or for a shipper, I don't get to understand what his tomorrow looks like.
Right. Right.
Now, today, the way most logistics companies or 3PLs work is even a 10-hour, 12-hour ahead saying, hey, tomorrow looks like this for me, helps us plan. And then we can work with industry players who already have this pre-vetted, who can tell us, right? So on the supply side, right, things are improving. But what we need to do is, it's not like, hey, I have a vetted driver, but can I promise availability?
Okay.
You are not just an advertising portal, right? Saying, I have these 4 guys, but can I promise that? And you're seeing that, like, for example, the Insta helps and all those things. That's the so they are trusted because there is Insta help building that trust, but they're also making it available. Right. It's not like, okay, there are 5 plumbers, choose from it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair point. I think the challenge I see there also, unfortunately, since I've been trying to use some of them, is that, again, the supply is not there.
Yes.
They're also struggling with that.
Correct.
How do you model the right amount of supply? And I think probably it's going to be a problem that will remain. I think it's a continuously evolving challenge to figure out, because even I think from our business, when we sometimes see it, we see spikes in onboardings are happening, and we can, like you said, sometimes be told 12 hours in advance.
Correct.
Or 24 hours in advance, and it's like, scale up, get ready. But that's not always possible.
Yes.
So it's an interesting, I think there is probably still more modeling and figuring out of this whole dynamic to be
That's
figured
one.
out.
You're right. The other thing, as I said, is the availability, visibility should be across the chain.
Maybe that's
so when I'm promising a certain delivery date and a time, it should be on the real availability data. Not that you send it to me, I'll figure out. And this, by the way, airlines and others do it, right? They know the real availability. You are booking a seat on a particular flight.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Now, of course, the flight can get cancelled, but you are not like, okay,
hopefully
hopefully get something.
Right.
Like, I need to go to Bombay tomorrow, come to the airport at 10 o'clock and we will talk.
Yeah.
Right. So this industry has to learn from that, right? Because it is possible. It is possible to do that, right? There are mechanisms to do it, correct? And it is how you structure the information of availability and the operations behind it, right? So that gap exists. So you see, in the logistics industry and even with advanced economies, right? There's a gap between the information flow and the physical flow. They don't really match. Even if one leads the other, it is a problem. You have to be in sync.
Right.
And then you have to be in sync with your financial flows.
Yeah, there's a lot of system. Yeah.
Yeah, like say tomorrow I can say, what, I can get 50 big people to deliver for me, but I need to pay them 50% of the day in advance. Now, where is my cash flow?
Right.
Not where is the money, where is the cash flow?
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. I think interestingly, we've been talking about obviously risk a lot, and you brought up trust. I think I do want to ask you. This is the logistics world and supply chain world is very complex. It's like you said, many parties involved, right? So what is it that can really hold trust in this complex? And practically, what do you think? Either is it happening, or is it, we're still far from it, and there are some concrete things we can do to build that trust across such a long, because like I think you said, the ecosystem needs to be part of this, but how do you practically get the ecosystem to be a part of it?
Yeah, interesting. I think you asked me at least 3-4 questions,
yes,
right?
Probably.
So let me try and pick one of them, right, to begin with. So I think, just my opinion, I don't think the logistics industry has started dabbling at it, but there is no, concrete thing. And I'll tell you where what example comes. I think a few years ago, right? I think I used to see these Airtel ads which will say, if you have a problem, talk to me. Right? We are here to, I think that lady used to come on that ad and say, we are now. I think that's where it begins, some kind of that thing. So somebody will have to take the lead, and I think the 3PLs and the 4PLs can take that lead. I think that's the first thing, right? And then gather everyone around because see, while supply chains are complex ecosystems, but so are manufacturing chains. I mean, do you think there are less players in a telecom or a mobile operation? No.
You're right.
Are there less people involved in a airport operations or an airline operation? No. It's how do you bring them together, right? One obvious way is, you can kind of argue with me that, okay, the airlines has DGCA as an authority. Financial services has, XYZ, right? Well, yeah, you could go down that path. How much of trust they deliver is different, but they will definitely deliver some kind of compliance and other things. Telecom has TRAI.
Yep.
Right? But I think the way I look at it is, if the 3PLs and the 4PLs step up, now it requires a lot of investments. It requires that kind of focus, but definitely doable.
Right.
But I think very, very early stages. I think some companies are kind of trying it out. But I think how do you build a sustainable business model around that? Correct, is the question, right? What does trust get you? Right? We know what we will not get without trust.
Right.
But what does trust get you?
Yeah, what's that additional?
Or additional, what does it even get?
Yeah.
Right? Is it stickiness? Is it incremental revenue? And not just you. If you are taking the lead, what does the ecosystem benefit from the trust?
Yeah,
and it's true of every industry, right?
And I think so two things. I think you said one is, of course, maybe not directly, but maybe some sort of self-regulating body that also helps bring these kind of ecosystem players under one. Because I think banking, it works because RBI says, there's certain rules and laws and you do that. And TRAI does the same thing. And all of them have these bodies which actually sort of loosely but still have fairly tight governance that manages and brings them together. I think, like you said, I'm not aware of anyone in the logistics industry that does that yet.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, like, even let's say the retail industry doesn't have that, right? So I think I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that was one way to do it.
Of course,
right? But I think the players can come together.
Right.
And I think that will probably happen. Now, where does it go? How does it work out? I have no clue.
Right.
Because you also have multimodal logistics, right? A shipping company has very different objectives and things to optimize. The rail guys have a different. Now, the way rail operates in India it's not like the surface transport. So you have different things, right? Like when you were talking about that open protocol in Mumbai, so that anybody can use one ticket to do an interoperable travel. And I look at mobility as a great example, right? In India, we struggle to have this interoperable mobility card. Like go to UK, you can have an Oyster, helps you move, right? I think some kind of that thing is actually good enough. You don't need an authority.
That's a great way to bring together.
So you need to bring that together, right? Because ultimately, if what I ordered for didn't get, and I don't get the refund or the replacement, that breaks trust.
That breaks trust, absolutely. Right. So a lot of times when we talk about trust, I mean, people say, well, trust takes time to build, right? You have to do a series of actions and prove that you are trustworthy. Now, in this world which we live in, which is hyper fast and just everything has to happen now in an instant, are there things you could do to build trust in that instant, in sort of like that shortened time frame now to bring that conversation forward?
Can we compress this? Yes. Right? I personally don't think it's the compression that's the problem. The adoption and the propagation of that is a challenge. Okay. It's like I have a policy, but the policy to percolate takes time because every actor acts on that policy.
Right.
So I think compressions can happen. I don't see that as a problem. And a lot of people are building it like, there are people who are building trust around the gig workforce. There are people who are building trust around gig vehicles.
Right.
There are people who are building, trust around asset-light operations. Right? And earlier it was like, oh, you don't have a truck, how do I trust you?
Right.
Right. So it is being built, but the propagation of that is
still
propagation of the concern. As I said, like where do you start is important. If you ask me, right, I said, boss, what is trust?
Yeah.
I didn't get what I ordered, and I'm not getting refund on time. So whom do I trust?
Yeah, fair.
Now, who's going to solve that problem? Is it a shipper problem? Is it the logistic company problem? Is it the delivery boy's problem? Imagine like you ordered a 2 lakh plus iPhone or an iPad and the wrong configuration comes.
Yeah.
And then the call center tells you, well, I will schedule a pickup in 3 days. Once it comes to my returns warehouse, then I will issue a refund.
Yeah.
And by the way, that refund doesn't give you back the money. It will go back into a wallet.
Which you can use.
Which you can only use with me again.
Yeah. Fair.
I mean, this is one example.
Yeah.
Right? Or you ordered the iPad, and it's happened to me. I ordered an iPad 2 years ago. The keyboard came and the iPad came 3 days later. Right? So I think with e-commerce, especially now, I think the way to look all of this optimization is what kind of experience are you delivering?
Yeah. Fair.
And you work back from there.
Yeah, that's a great lens to put on this. I think, we'll sort of get to the end of this now, but looking at the future, right? Let's just talk a little bit about the future. What innovations are you seeing in the logistics world, and what is it you're really excited about? Is there something that's really exciting about? Like, this is something that's going to happen. That's really fantastic.
I think quite a few things, right? I think, as I said, the cost of orchestrating an outcome is definitely falling. And there are very different ways to now orchestrate a outcome in terms of delivery, right? So supply chains, if you look at it, supply chains from an inventory point of view, they're getting leaner. So earlier I used to, if I'm selling 2 bars of soap, I need to have 25 bars of soap because I just don't know. I know the demand, but I don't know how quickly I will deliver. Right. So in a way, this dream of every supply chain guy saying it should be a pull environment versus a push environment, right? That's definitely, I think, getting onto the fast track, right? The intra-city logistics within the city has developed fantastically well.
Yeah.
Right. Who would have thought like this would happen 10 years ago, right? That's another area, and I think it's very early stages. And though we might have seen large companies, it's still very early stages, right? You're going to kind of build a lot of more consumer experiences on top of it, and it's about convenience and not just about speed there, right? So again, going back to your question, my view of trust is what did I use it for? For convenience. Yeah, you told me it will come in 30 minutes. You come on the 34th minute, I am not happy. Right? You delivered fantastically well on the product on that, but that 5 minutes is right because my view of trust was convenience. Right? So I think convenience is becoming a big enabler for looking at supply chains as whole. I think geopolitics is becoming a big player. I don't know how do you model that information. How do you hold certain kinds of inventory in places where you can sell that inventory when you need to, right? Especially if you're working with outsourced logistics players, right? Enterprises are looking at it in very different way, right? So that's the other thing, and I think at the city level, the merging of mobility and transport is very interesting phenomenon for me. Like there are companies that started off as a mobility company, but they are now getting into delivery. Some companies started as delivery, but they are now trying to get into mobility. I think. Uber Courier is one example. They're basically a mobility company, but they're right
excess capacity less that you.
So a lot of so tomorrow you could have this innovation where I could actually become a gig delivery person because I'm going back from this place to my home and I could deliver on the way.
Yeah.
Right? And now trust is a very different thing that time, correct? Because I'm a one-time guy. I'm not even a gig delivery person.
Yeah.
Right? So those models become viable. That's another exciting thing. But in the middle mile is where I think a lot of innovation is going to happen, right? Because distribution is changing fast. Distribution is changing very fast. So innovations around how does the backbone work? Like for example, RoRo, the road on rail, where the trucks are mounted on.
Yeah.
It's a great innovation. People think it's not, but it's great. On the western coast, the Konkan Railway, right? That's the fastest way to reach the entrance of Mumbai.
Yeah. One last bit, I would say that if you had to leave advice for folks that are maybe leaders who are building this space or folks who are looking to get into this whole complex but exciting world, what advice would you give them?
I mean, I'm a good question, but to be fair, I'm not somebody who can advise anyone because there are a lot of guys doing a lot of jobs, right? I think a lot of great things in this sector. But I think, as I said, focus on what has not changed. Anchor yourself around what has not changed. Anchor yourself around what will remain stable, even what has changed. Like trust has to be very core to it. Right. And build around that. Don't think about, will this technology help? Will this technology not help? Should I be asset light versus asset heavy? Should I be operations heavy versus operations light? Should I be just a pure service provider? Right? Those are all answers that can come from what you anchor yourself against.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, that's a great way to look at and I think it's just not this problem. I think it's a great way to look at any problem, any industry problem that you're trying to solve, right? Anchor yourself to things things that are grounded truth, which will not change, and then sort of build around that and try to find areas where you can actually optimize, maybe make more efficient or gain a competitive edge.
Correct. And also, right, don't stay too high level, right? So you can say, well, faster, cheaper, better. It's a great, in my opinion, motherhood statement.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? But how do you contextualize that?
Yeah.
And what happens if your consumer chooses one over the other or a combination of that? This is exactly what happened to quick commerce.
Yep.
When it started kind of eating into the e-commerce pie. It was the same anchors, but the way it got reconfigured was very different. And it was not cheaper. People were willing to pay. But faster and better meant other things.
Yep.
So it's great to get to these anchors, but how do you contextualize it? And what do you carry about the vision matters.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I think I can clearly say I've learned a lot.
My pleasure, Paritosh.
I've got a new found sort of respect of saying, hey, anytime I think of a problem, first let me anchor myself to something before I just sort of dive into it. So Ganesh, thank you so much. It's been
my
a
pleasure,
pleasure.
Paritosh.
And hopefully folks that are listening will take a lot back with them in terms of learnings about not just the logistics space, but I think in general about product, about building businesses. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely.